So at the beginning of October I signed up for a 3-month trial with Fender Play. That isn't exclusive to me, it's open to anyone at the moment, so if you're interested there's a link below. So I played through 3 of the 5 levels in its entirety and I've looked through the last 2. So I've got a pretty good idea of what the course is all about, and I thought today would be a good time to sit down and go through and tell you what my thoughts are about the course. We'll look at how much it costs, we'll look at what it covers and what's involved in the structure of it. I'll also talk about my likes, my dislikes, and at the end I'll just look at it in comparison to the other courses that I've taken recently. Before we get into it though, if you haven't joined me before, my name's Luke and this channel is all about my beginner guitar progress, tips that I like to share along the way, and also guitar course reviews, just like this one today. So if that's something you're into, please consider subscribing and hitting the notification bell, and if you enjoy the video, please give it a big thumbs up. So who's the course suited for? Well, firstly we need to look at the instruments that it covers. It covers bass, electric guitar, acoustic guitar, and ukulele. It's aimed at those who are entirely new to the instrument, I mean just have no idea whatsoever. And I say that because it's actually quite slow in terms of how it goes through the course. The lessons are very short and they're aimed at keeping people's attention and obviously keeping it interesting. The course can be played through your mobile phone, it can be played through a tablet, and it can also be played through your desktop. They all sync together seamlessly, and that is part of the real draw of this guitar course. Whatever platform you choose to learn through though, there's a progress bar that shows you within each level. So as you go along you can get to see a basic idea of how far you're progressing throughout the course. There's also a very active private Facebook group, so if you enjoy that social part of it, they seem to be very supportive. I've been told there's been some trolls in the past in that Facebook group, but I didn't see any in my time spent in there. So what's the cost of the course? Well, it works out to be $9.99 per month unless you choose to go down the annual subscription route, and then it works out at $7.50. In addition to that, you get a 10% discount off all Fender gear. What's great though, if you sign up now and just use the 3-month free trial, you don't have to enter any credit card details, so it's not going to catch you out if you forget to and go over that period. So let's now dive into the course and you'll get to see exactly what's behind the scenes. So this is what you're presented with when you first go into the course. You get to choose your path based upon your instrument of choice. For example, acoustic, electric, bass, and ukulele. Once you've chosen your instrument, you can obviously choose your path. I chose to go through rock, that's what it says, it's my active path, but you could also change that to something else, whatever you fancy. For example, folk music, where you might go through on the acoustic. But let's go back to where I was learning, and this was on the rock path. Once you've gone on the path, what you'll see down the left hand side is the 5 levels that you get to work through, and I'll get into these shortly. But on top of that, you get to learn the songs, and these are split by the instrument of choice here, and then you get collections, and these collections will be based on different groups of songs. For example, if you were interested in the Rolling Stones, they might have a collection of Rolling Stones riffs and songs that you get to learn. Coupled with that, they've then got the skills that are based on each of the instruments. Inside here you get to see various things that you can learn through the course itself, plus a few extras. Techniques, exercises, then there's specific categories. So for example, you could practice exercises before you get into your main practice session. Then if you favourite anything, whether that's a particular lesson, it gets stored here if you want to revisit it. And in addition to that, they've got articles. The articles are just blog posts that help you guide you through playing. So let's get back into the pathways and take a look at what you get. First off, you get a welcome to the path. Then you get a few various skill courses that you'll see here and playing notes, and then you get a riff. So it kind of just gives a slow introduction and then gets you playing pretty quickly. So that's good for those who are complete beginners, when you get to feel that you're actually playing a song and learning and progressing, and it's all about keeping you engaged but also feeling encouraged to carry on playing. Then scrolling down, you'll see that you've got various things here that you start to strum. You get to learn some chord diagrams and tablature, and this is what's really interesting about it. You don't just get tabs, you also get to learn sheet music along the way. So I learned something new doing this course, and if that's something you're into, then you might really appreciate it. I think many people and many guitar players don't feel they need to know it, and you don't, to be quite honest. But if you've got any interest in music, you might get something out of it. Then you've got some more songs, here we go. You've got another brick in the wall, so you get to learn part of that song. It's not the entire song, but you get to sort of learn a riff within it. Then you get to find out if you've got any issues, and it helps you self-diagnose any problems that you may have, and then you start to look at some chords as you see through. And then you get to learn some open chords as well as some cool songs. And at the end you get a self-assessment to check if you're ready to move on to the next level. But before we look at that, let's look at what you can learn inside one of these small courses. So for example, if we went to these first time chords, G, C and D, you will see here that you get a lesson, it teaches you how to play it, and then you go into practice mode. So if I just show you these briefly, so here you get to see obviously the instructor, then you get to see the chords below, and you get to see some tab indicating the whole notes there, for example. And you also get to separate those chords if you're having trouble getting the finger positions. And on top of that, there's some related videos if you're ever interested, plus tools like a tuner, for example. Going back out of that though, what you'll find is then that once you've completed that lesson, you go into the practice mode, where it's literally what you're going to be doing. So I'll show you now what you get here. So it's super basic in this instance, and it's very much like this through the early stages, but it's all about getting your fingers used to those positions and learning to strum correctly. But that's what you get. But obviously as you get further into course, you've got more tabs on the page and things get a little bit more tricky, and you have to remember a bit more, particularly when the guitar teacher's teaching you. So let's get into some of the songs and how they're laid out. So for example, if we went in here to this song, again you get the lesson and then you get the practice mode. What is cool about this course is there's actually quite a big repertoire of songs and some famous ones to boot. So it obviously keeps you interested if you like popular music. So the layout is again that you get the guitar teacher at the top and you get the tabs below. This one isn't auto scrolling, you'll find that in the practice mode. But a good thing about this course overall is that you get some really famous songs, and obviously if you're interested in popular music then it'd be ideal for that. So you've gone through that lesson and then it's time to go into practice mode. So you're in practice mode and you've got some various tools to help you. So you can set a metronome on or off, you can have a count into the song. You can set the playback speed, the tempo of it. It's not massively customizable, but it's pretty good. It's not as good as Ultimate Guitar, for example, but it's quite good. What you will find here and see though, is that obviously you've got to know what's coming up because the auto scroll will work its way through it. So then in practice mode, obviously you get the tab and it's got auto scroll, and it's also got some functions where you can try the tempo. It's not that customizable. It's not as good as Ultimate Guitar, for example, where you've got a slider, but you've got some control over it. In addition to that, as I've previously mentioned, you get a metronome and you've got a count in to go through it. So if we press play on this one, it counts you in. Then it starts playing through it. But obviously you're quite limited in terms of what you can see below these first 6 bars. It does move down, but you've got to obviously be quite quick to move through it. It works okay. It's a lot more difficult when you're doing it with a teacher, and sometimes they have some auto scrolling tabs below. So hopefully that gives you a good idea of what you can expect going through the course. Now let's get into my likes and dislikes about playing through it. So what did I like about the course? Well, one of the things that I enjoyed about the course is it's actually quite slow in terms of the introduction. Some people have complained about this, but I think if you're entirely new, it's very beneficial. I spoke to a few others in the Facebook group and they said that was part of what they really enjoyed about it. But I almost felt they were a bit embarrassed to say because the course has been rubbish for it in the past. But I like that structure because when you're a complete beginner, you need that slow introduction. 5-minute lessons that teach you some very basic ideas about guitar is exactly what you need to keep you interested, to keep you coming back, because you'll be able to grasp those, be able to play, and then start to feel like you're actually making progress. As an example of that, you get to do 1-finger chords and then you work through to open chords over a period of time. So it's actually pretty good in getting your fingers used to playing. There's a logical progression to the lessons, and over time you get introduced gently to various topics on the guitar. I think this is a good thing, and like I said, it helps to keep the interest of the complete beginner. There's a good focus on playing in time from the early stages of the course, and also when you get to do the practice mode, you can set a metronome. So it obviously helps with that, and I think that's something that some other courses could really benefit from. The video production is high, as you probably would expect from Fender, very clean presentation and well lit. There's a huge repertoire of songs and riffs that you can learn to play, but some of these are scattered through your learning path anyway, and particular ones to the genre that you've chosen to learn. At the end of each level is a self-evaluation lesson, and you get to put into practice what you've been learning, and this is a really good thing to get some idea of how you're progressing. I enjoyed this, and I think this is very important when you're learning online because it's quite a passive experience. Otherwise, you're not obviously getting feedback like you would if you were in person with a guitar teacher. A really cool thing about this course, if you have a Fender Mustang amp, is that when you come to learn a song, they have the tone preset that you can download and put on your amp so you can sound exactly like what it's supposed to. The practice mode, although a little bit limited, has auto-scrolling tabs. You can set the tempo and obviously you can put a metronome. So it's a pretty cool tool to be using as you start learning songs and riffs through the course. Another cool thing about it is if you play more than 3 times a week and 7 minutes each time for those occasions, then you go into something called a streak period. And those streaks mean that you can get entered into a competition to win some gear, which is pretty cool. So another thing I like about the course is the active community. Some people won't bother with that, but others who want to get some idea of where they're heading and how others are getting on and just generally share their frustrations, it's a good place to go and do that. Overall, I found the content to be well delivered. The guitar teachers obviously are very knowledgeable, and the way that they break the course down into bite-sized chunks helps to keep you engaged. There are some elements of the course that I didn't particularly enjoy and I think could be improved upon. The first is that this is aimed at complete beginners through to probably the very early stages of intermediate. Possibly. Obviously in the future it'd be nice if they add those kind of intermediate stages and advanced, so at the moment you're kind of limited in those first 5 levels. The genres of music are also a bit limited, so there's no punk or ska or metal, for example, so if those are of particular interest to you, you won't find them here. But saying that, obviously the basics of learning guitar are all pretty much the same. The video production, while it's high quality, does feel a bit sterile in times, and the teachers themselves feel quite wooden. They hardly move from their position when they're teaching. It's all kind of a bit robotic. It's a bit weird. You kind of get used to it, but at first it's a bit odd. Their posture is very good, so it kind of makes you feel like you want to sit up all the time. But generally it feels a little bit too clinical, a bit sterile, and it doesn't always have the personality that you want in someone teaching you guitar. There's a bit of an issue with the tabs that accompany some of the lessons. It auto scrolls, but you can't see that far ahead. So you only kind of get half a page, like on a desktop, for example. So it relies on you memorizing some of it, which is kind of annoying, to be honest, when you're trying to play through it. And obviously you're listening to the teacher go through it and then play, but you can't see far enough ahead. So you've got to try and remember it, otherwise you might miss something. You kind of get used to it, but it's something I think needs changing. Another bit of an issue is that there's not many full songs. There's some being added now, but generally what you'll find is you get riffs, you get some parts of the song, but you never get to do all the song and a complete playthrough of the song either, which would be really good if you could break down the parts, which they do, and then be able to play them at the end in their entirety with the instructor, but that doesn't happen, so that's a bit annoying too. So overall, Fender Play is a useful online learning tool. It's very basic in the early stages of playing, and it's ideal for those who are entirely new to the guitar. But how does it stack up against the best free course that I've played to date online? Well, that course would be Justin Guitar's course. You've probably heard me talk about it before. If you haven't joined me, many people know about it, but it's so good that it often trumps many of these paid for courses. The first thing I would say that where Fender wins is the app. Now Justin's obviously updating his app because he's recently updated his beginner guitar course, but the two never really synced together that well, and it almost felt like 2 separate courses. Whereas with Fender Play's course, like I mentioned previously, you can literally jump from one platform to the other. It synchronizes and it's the same course. So it's an excellent and fluid way to start learning guitar. So how do the courses really compare though? I'd say in terms of the pace of the courses, Fender's is very slow and aimed at the complete beginner. Justin's course isn't as slow as that, but it does hold your hand through those stages. In terms of the overall levels that you'll be at the end of them, I think Justin Guitar's course will put you at a higher level than it will with Fender. Although saying that, when you get to level 5 of Fender Play, you still will have a good knowledge of the fundamentals of guitar. A good thing about the Fender course is that some of the riffs and the songs that you learn are built into the course structure, whereas with Justin you might have to go outside of his course a little bit to learn some of his songs. I've mentioned that because I've spoke to a couple of people who found that quite distracting, and for that reason they chose Fender Play. So obviously there's different strokes for different folks, and some people might enjoy that kind of linear path of Fender a little bit more than Justin's course. So all this being said, my recommendation would be to stick with Justin's course unless you particularly enjoy the multi-platform effect of Fender Play and you want to buy some Fender gear because you get 10% off. But overall, why not? You could try Fender out, you get 3 months for free, you don't have to put your credit card details, so it's worth a shot. Ultimately though, if it was me and I was an absolute beginner, I'd stick with Justin's course. You can go through his beginner, through his intermediate, and through to the advanced stages. It has everything and it carries you all the way through. We all appreciate different aspects when it comes to being taught how to play guitar though, so maybe you would enjoy Fender Play more. If you were thinking about taking either course or you've got any experience of playing either of them, if you've got your own opinion, please let me know in the comments below. Until the next one, cheers.